Gentlemen, welcome to this, the first video in the series of how to get an A star in sociology. Today we're going to be looking at paper 1, education. While we're predominantly going to be looking at education, the first 3 questions, we'll also tackle how to answer the first 10 marker within the methods section of the research methods in context section. So how does our paper look? Well, in total it looks like 4 questions, 2 short, 1 10 and 1 30 on education, and then 2 questions on research methods and theory. So you get a 4, outline 2, a 6, outline 3, a 10 mark, which is applying an item and analysing, and then the 30 marker, how to apply an item and evaluate a particular view. For the methods in context, you get applying an item, evaluate a method, and for the theory section, you get a 10 mark that says outline any 2 points of a particular theory, which is where you can really run wild. Now, for the short answers, there are 4 key things to remember. Fully explain your key terms. Do not give me a simple one-word answer. You will not get credit for it. Develop your points for 2 marks. Separate the points clearly. If it's asked for 2 points, make it exceptionally clear that you have wrote 2 marks, and use the item if ever requested to do so. For our 2017 paper, outline 2 cultural factors that may affect ethnic differences in education achievement for 4 marks. You gain 1 mark for stating one reason that some Indian and Chinese pupils attain higher rates might be the Asian work ethic. 1. Where these families strictly prioritise education and a professional career path for these children, often as a route out of poverty and social discrimination. 2. And again, 3 for the next part and 4 for the next. You can see how it goes from simple one-sentence answers to a developed statement, and again you're going to see it in this answer, and if you take time to read through it, pause the video, you can see you gain 1 mark for school textbooks reinforcing gender role, and an example that's developed for the 2nd mark, 3rd mark, 4th mark, 5th mark and 6th mark. 6 out of 6, nice and easy. Now for the 4 mark you should be spending no longer than 4 to 5 minutes, and for the 6 mark you should be spending absolutely no longer than 6 minutes. You want to save as much time as you can for the 20 and the 10 mark questions in this paper, sorry, the 20 and the 30. Now for the 2 types of 10 markers, we're going to go through some examples. For the education side, you get using the item, analyse 2. Apply material from item A, analyse 2 effects of increased parental choice on pupils' experience of education. And the item is as follows. Since the 1980s, a major aim of government policy has been to increase parental choice in education. There's now a wide range of school types, and league tables on school performance are also publicly available. Increased parental choice has had many effects on pupils' experience of education. Now the question is specifically asking you to look at parental choice on pupils' experiences of education. So we must apply whatever item A says to that pupils' experience of education. And of course, pupils' experience of education changes dramatically when we take into account school tables and school types. So we must have at least 2 detailed paragraphs. You do not need to write a conclusion, you do not need to write an introduction, and you should spend a maximum of 15 minutes on this question, preferably closer to 12. Now in the example essay, I have already underlined what the question is asking you, and I've tried to identify the 2 reasons that we will talk about. Number 1, wider range of schools, so comprehensive, grammars, etc. And number 2, league tables. You cannot write about anything else. If you do, you will not gain credit for it, no matter how good it is, and we have seen a number of students gain 10 out of 10 had this have been a different type of question, but 0 in this case. So a key structure, AO1, AO2, AO3, and we're going to see the repetition of this. Now within this you can use PIL or you can use IDIL, it's up to you, but I would stick to AO1, AO2, AO3 as a reminder in the back of your head of how to answer this. Number 1, identify a key point from the item and develop it. Go beyond simple description. For your AO2, your application, you have to apply it back to the question and show a clear chain of reasoning as to how it answers the question. And although the question asks you to analyse, what that actually means is a deeper examination that goes beyond explanation. So I keep it simple by saying evaluation. Give a sentence of analysis or evaluation. Criticise it, support it, go a little bit further than you would previously. And then for the second point, you repeat. So keeping it simple, AO1, AO2, AO3. Mr. Watkins, what does that look like in an example? Here we go. So in the model answer, item A identifies that pupil experiences of school has changed as a result of the publication of league tables. I've used the wording of the question straight away. Publication of schools' exam results ensures that schools achieve good results or are more in demand. That is simple description. What follows is more detailed, developed explanation, and of course it's nowhere near as good as what you will be able to write, because you are far more knowledgeable than I am. Your AO2 is that chain of reasoning, the application. So how does a publication of a league table change children's experience of school? Well, schools that are more popular result in an attracted higher funding. This means they can afford better teachers. This means they can afford better facilities. Therefore, more pupils will attend that school, and it perpetuates that circle. Therefore, students' experiences are different. My AO3, I could choose to criticise this by saying that in inner London, schools that have higher ratings of EAL or FSM get more funding because of that. But I've chosen to go down the route of Marxism. Marxism would argue that marketisation, which is choice, is merely the method to perpetuate class inequality through parentocracy, that the choice of a parent is false. 10 out of 10. Now, for our second type of question, we've chosen a sample essay. You can read through the item at your leisure. You can read through the question at your leisure. But this time it's asking you to look at minority ethnic groups' achievement and it being above average in school. So once again, I've tried to highlight the key points within the item. I've given you the marks, the writing frame, and I've given you a model essay to go through. So as you can see, I've got my clear separation of AO1, AO2, AO3. There is nothing in the exam to stop you from identifying in the margin AO1, AO2, AO3. Make it easy for me. I'm going to be marking your papers. I do not want to be spend time looking for students that have got developed explanation, application, and examination and analysis. Make it easy for them. Signpost it. Literally. Now, for the second type of question that comes up in method in context, it's outline and explain two arguments against a view. Now, in this case, it's the view that sociology is a science. Again, the same kind of structure, but this time you can talk about any relevant points so long as they go beyond the simple and are developed. You must apply them back to the question with a clear chain of reasoning and link it back, and also give a sentence of analysis or evaluation. So a model answer looks like this: AO1, AO2, AO3. You can see that my chain of reasoning clearly explains how Marxism predicts that how it clearly applies how sociology is not a science, and it applies the statement that I've given as my AO1. Now for the 30 markers, which we need to do as well as we possibly can on, and we should have the most amount of time on, the question from the example essay is as follows: apply material from item B on your own knowledge. Evaluate sociological explanations of the role of education in transmitting ideas and values. So the crux of this question is, how does education transmit ideas and values? And of course the answer is, it doesn't always. For functionalists, actually, education isn't about, for functionalists, it is about transmitting ideas and values. Equally, for feminism and Marxism, it is about transmitting ideas and values. But for postmodernists, it's actually far more different purposes of roles in education. So you have to look at the essay, you have to look at item B, and the authors clearly identified feminism. So one of my points will be feminism. And my second point would be the fragmentation and transmission of diverse range of ideas and values, i.e. globalization and the impact of postmodernism. So what can we talk about? Now, I would spend at least 5 minutes planning my answer, and I would note down the key sociologists, I'd note down some key terms. So we could talk about functionalism, we could talk about the new right, and we could talk about Marxism. We're also going to talk about postmodernism and feminism as a must. Now within feminism, you can talk about gender roles and reinforcement of this through socialization. For postmodernism, you can talk about globalization and the effects of marketization. Whereas for functionalism, you could talk about Durkheim, Parsons, Davis and Moore, so talk about solidarity. For the new right, Chubb and Moe and two roles. And for Marxism, you could talk about the conflict between Althusser, Bowes-Gintis and Willis. Now for this question, you do need an introduction. Use the item straight away. Show to the examiner that you've got a good understanding of the material in item B, and that you have some own knowledge and you have an idea that you are going to evaluate. So for this, conflict sociologists argue that it is to reinforce dominant values, but postmodernists would disagree with this. So already we're starting to get into the sociological debate that exists about the role of education. Now in my first paragraph, I would talk about feminism. I would use this as a jumping point. Item B suggests that feminists believe that schools transmit ideas that sustain patriarchy. My point, I go on to give more developed evidence that goes beyond the simple, And then in my application, I show through a clear chain of reasoning how feminists argue that the transmission of ideas and values leads to reinforcing gender roles in later life that maintains the patriarchal status quo. I could talk about girls outperforming boys in schools, girls going to more universities than boys, but yet still girls in a patriarchal society do not earn nearly as well as men. Why is that? I've tried to explain it here. Now, my AO3, I can talk about internal evaluation with feminists. I can talk about sharp study that shows actually they're more likely to focus on educational achievement rather than their home life in modernity. Or I could talk about different perspectives. Now, I've chosen to do it internally here, but I could talk about Marxists. I could show the conflict with functionalists or postmodernists. Now, in my second paragraph, I've gone on from feminists to look at functionalists, and we've started to get into the sociological debate, because functionalists and feminists don't agree. Now, I hope you know that at this point in the course. Otherwise, we need to really focus on a little bit of revision. For your AO1, you've got Durkheim, you've got Parsons. Your AO2 is the application of those ideas and how it actually works in a real world example. And for AO3, I've got a link back to feminism, although I could talk about a number of different areas here. So putting all of that together, you'd have a third paragraph that might be on Marxism or it might be on postmodernism, and you have a conclusion that rounds off your judgments. Is this an effective explanation of the role of education? Is it actually transmitting ideas and values, or is it far more than just that? There's so much that you can talk about in this question. If you stick to the structure and labelling it as AO1, AO2, AO3, the examiner cannot but give you the top band for this. You've shown a detailed understanding of the item, you've shown developed description with supporting information, you've shown excellent application through a chain of reasoning, and you've got the sociological debate. If you've talked about feminism, Marxism, functionalism, postmodernism, you've ticked every box to get maximum marks. In the next video, we'll be looking at the 10 and the 20 mark question from contexts and how the different areas fit in with that. Please now take this time to think about how I'm going to revise effectively and to use this time to write up the writing frames that have been given to you. Have a lovely evening. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time in the next video.